Is it true that there is no trade market for Zach LaVine? Is it true that the very team that was interested in him at the deadline, the Detroit Pistons, no longer want Zach LaVine? We're going to be talking about the trade market for Zach LaVine and some possible trades where the Chicago Bulls could possibly move on from Zach LaVine. This is Rico Greenhowe, and this is another episode of Bulls Digest. And before we jump into it, I want to let you guys know that 75.7% of you guys are not subscribed to the channel. Make sure you hit that subscribe button so you can stay up to date with the latest news and happenings around your Chicago Bulls. And without further ado, guys, let's jump into the video. And the topic of the day is there a trade market for LaVine? All right, guys, so we're going to be looking at two articles here, or two pieces of information. One is a tweet that was done by a sports writer who is saying that in fact, the Detroit Pistons are no longer interested into Zach LaVine. And we're also going to be talking about an article which surfaced just a couple days ago, which links Zach LaVine heading out to a Clutch Sports event. And he was out there with Anthony Davis and also to LeBron James. And they actually dispute what is said here in the tweet. So let's first jump into the tweet here, which suggests that there is really not a market for Zach LaVine as far as being traded away from the Chicago Bulls. And so it is basically saying what we already know, in the sense that the Chicago Bulls want to move on from Zach LaVine this offseason. And he's saying that, look, only one team reportedly showed interest in LaVine at the deadline, which was the Pistons, but they're looking to pivot now that they have a new GM here, Tony Weaver. I guess Tony Weaver's future with the organization seriously in doubt. And so with the Pistons essentially shifting some things as far as the GM, they are not looking to go ahead now and trade for Zach LaVine, who, as we know, has $138 million remaining over the next 3 years, and is saying that Chicago might have to attach some assets to get LaVine off at that rate. And so let's first talk about that. And so is that correct in the sense that we will probably have to attach some assets to LaVine? Absolutely. I think you probably at this point are going to have to attach some assets because once again, he is injured. Okay. And when we got Zach LaVine, in order for us to come off Jimmy Butler, we made the Timberwolves give up assets. We got the draft rights to Laurel Marketing. We also got Chris Dunn, and we also got Zach LaVine. Is it going to take something like that to move him over to the Pistons? Absolutely. The Pistons really don't have a lot of, contracts where it's huge contracts or anything like that, but they have a lot of young pieces that we are going to be interested in. Cade Cunningham, obviously we're going to be interested in him. Certainly we're going to be interested in Jalen Durant, who I think is an excellent big man there. And then also too with Azor Thompson, who has been spectacular to me as a rookie. I think he's shown some high upside, and I think a sneaky prospect that the Chicago Bulls should absolutely look at is Jaden Ivey. So with those four pieces, guys, we are not just going to be able to ship LaVine over and that's going to be that. We are going to have to attach some type of asset over to the Detroit Pistons to where either they can flip it or they could use it at this point in time. So I do agree with that. However, I'm not sure that I necessarily agree with the fact that just because they are pivoting in their GM situation, that means that they're going to move off of Zach LaVine. I think that there is absolutely a trade market for Zach LaVine. I think anybody out there trying to say that there is not a trade market for Zach LaVine, that is just incorrect, because look, this is a guy that was 19-5. I know he's coming off a bad year where he was 19-3, but he only played in 25 games. And so are you telling me that a team like the Cavs wouldn't want to have him out there to help close down things with Donovan Mitchell or whoever they elect to move on with, are you telling me that the Magic wouldn't want to have Zach LaVine out there to help possibly as they're getting blitzed by Donovan Mitchell out there? Absolutely, they would love to have that. Look, even you can make a case that even the Nuggets would love to have his scoring, all right? And I'm not saying that that's going to happen because obviously they would have to give up some assets. They're going to definitely tap into some salary issues and things like that. But I'm just saying there is definitely a market for a guy that can score the basketball like LaVine. Is just the right fit and what assets you're going to throw at that. And so this really brings me to the next point, and this was an article that was done a couple days ago. And as you know, LaVine is signed with Clutch Sports, which is the same agency, I believe, as Anthony Davis and LeBron James. And I think he went to a pro day or something like that with them. And I know it's a bunch of nothing because people are wondering, all right, should we raise an eyebrow now that he is going to one of these events? And I'd say absolutely not. To be fun about it, I mean, this kind of reminds me of that show with The Rock, and it's called Ballers or whatever, where the guy is a sports agent and he's got a bunch of guys that are under his label, right, as a sports agent. So this is the same thing, man. They all go to different events and support each other, support the organization, stuff like that. So I think that's a bunch of nothing. But it does really bring up the point that the Lakers are absolutely interested in Zach LaVine. So that disputes the fact that there is no market for him. And this is what was said here in this article. So look, we already know about the contract. We know that, he has a $48.9 million player option for the 26-27 season. And we know that the CBA is getting ready to kick in, which is going to limit how certain teams can operate here. But this is the key part of this article. And it says that James did endorse the idea of the Lakers acquiring LaVine in a trade ahead of this year's deadline. All right, so that right there lets you know that the Lakers are very much interested in getting Zach LaVine over there. Now, is it going to be a great fit? I'm not saying that, but this really lets you know that there is a market for Zach LaVine, and I absolutely think that the Clippers, if they could get it done, might be interested in it. I'm not saying that we're going to get Paul George over there, but that has been talked about. But look, there is a market for Zach LaVine. And this is what that package would have looked like. Now, I know that there is a different situation now with D'Angelo Russell in his contract situation, but initially these are one of the deals that would perhaps work in getting LaVine over to the Lakers and us getting some assets back. Now, D'Angelo Russell, I do agree here, would not necessarily be a great fit, a bit redundant with Kobe White there. I absolutely believe that with a guard coming over, but I do get excited about the fact of getting Rui Hachimura over there. I think that this guy, to me, is a forward that can do a lot of different things, and mainly he can defend, but he is an actual wing, which is what we need. And Jared Vanderbilt has shown some signs, especially the year before this last year when he was not injured. He played some very good defense. He also provided some interior strength for the Lakers, and this is a guy that we absolutely could use because we need that interior presence. So I like both of those. I'm not sure I like D'Angelo Russell coming over, but this is just an idea, guys, of what is possibly out there for Zach LaVine. And you know that it doesn't matter what Rob Pelinka says. It doesn't matter what the owner of the Lakers says. It only matters what LeBron James says and Clutch Sports says, because look, we all know that if LeBron James is on the Lakers or on any team, he essentially runs that organization. So you better believe that if he is saying that he wants Zach LaVine over there, the Lakers will absolutely explore every option possible to get him over there. And finally, may I add this, that if we were somehow to get Bronny James, and I'm not saying that we are going to at all. I'm just saying if we had Bronny James, you better believe that LeBron James would somehow get the Lakers to get on the phone to try to get not only Bronny James, but they would also try to get LaVine over there. All right. Now that leads me to the last part of the video, guys. And I think, that's a trade that was thrown out there a while back, and we really don't have anything for the Detroit Pistons. But I'm going to throw something out there, and these are hypothetical trades, and these trades do work from a money standpoint. Now, getting the GM to really decide if this is a great deal for everybody involved, but I'm just throwing it out there. So let's start here with the Portland Trail Blazers. I think going off the last video, I think that we could probably agree that the Portland Trail Blazers deal made the most sense with what they need and what they would be giving up. Now, we know that the Cleveland Cavaliers are in a interesting situation with Donovan Mitchell, and they may not be able to lock him up for the long term. And maybe the Cleveland Cavaliers might look to get some assets back and not wait for Donovan Mitchell to just perhaps outright leave them. So I'm suggesting that we would make that deal with Portland. We would bring Cleveland in on this deal. And essentially what would happen is Cleveland would go ahead. They would give us Donovan Mitchell. We would retain Ayton. Portland Trail Blazers get what they want in Zach LaVine and Vooch, and then the Cleveland Cavaliers would get obviously a defender and a wing player and a scorer in Jeremy Grant. They also would get a defensive guard that hopefully you get him to knock down some three-pointers, or he might actually be available to slide into the starting lineup to go along with Darius Garland. I'm not sure how the Cavs would want to play that to go along with their bigs, but this is just a hypothetical option. Again, I mean, I'm not sure that I necessarily like Donovan Mitchell over to the Chicago Bulls. Again, that's going to run into a little bit of a lineup situation because we would have him, we would have Kobe White, depending on what we're going to do with with Lonzo Ball. You know, that's going to be very guard oriented. We do get an all-star in Ayton. We would get that with Donovan Mitchell as well, but Donovan Mitchell doesn't necessarily distribute the ball enough to my liking, especially a guy who gets the ball as much as he does. He's also injury prone as well, but he does have those numbers, and he is that type of guys that could actually elevate the Bulls, because I do see that the Cavs obviously got a little bit better with him being over there. They definitely rose up in the standings, and I definitely think that we would rise up in the standings with these two players, and we'd still have to build out the roster. The Trailblazers would get some vets to go over with their young core. I think that that's going to help them as far as getting their rebuild in the right direction. And like I said, with the Cavs, they move on and they get some players that could immediately help them, and they're not going into a rebuild situation. I think that they're still very competitive in the Eastern Conference with that. The last trade really that I would throw up there, guys, is going to be another 4-team trade. And this is, again, hypothetical, but I've thrown this up, and this is based off the Portland Trail Blazers situation. I'm saying, again, Portland does stick with Zach LaVine and Vooch. I think that that makes a whole bunch of sense. And I think that we would stick with Ayton, but I'm saying that we throw a team like Washington in here. And look, I think that Kuzma is turning into basically that team's Bradley Beal at this point in time. I just think that Bradley Beal, in that situation, I think the Wizards just finally decided they weren't going anywhere. I know Kuzma has just signed off on a deal, and I think he's 1 year in on this new deal that he just signed, but they're not going anywhere with Kyle Kuzma, and maybe they are going to be able to get this deal done because, look, Kuzma comes over to us. He is going to be a wing player that can immediately start for us. This guy can affect the floor in multiple ways, and I think we definitely get a boost there. We get the height that we're looking for with Ayton. And then with the Wizards, they're going to get Marcus Smart and Zaire Williams, who I think they do hold on to Zaire Williams. Marcus Smart, they could possibly go ahead and flip him to a team that is more of a contender. That's a possibility. And I think with the Grizzlies, perhaps this works out a little bit better for them because now, they have Desmond Bane. They would have Ja Morant. They would have Jeremy Grant, who can be a knockdown scorer and also a slasher, and he's going to protect them a little bit more on the defensive end to go along with Jaren Jackson. So I think that they would still need to get a big, but still, this helps the Grizzlies. I think this does help the Wizards as far as trying to clear out some things and continue on with their rebuild. Again, with Portland, they get a little bit more of the veteran presence that they're looking for, and with us, we address the height, and we also address that much needed 3 and D wing player that we could use, and I think we get a little bit more with Kuzma there. So anyway, guys, let me know in the comments what you guys think. Do you think that there is a trade market for Zach LaVine, or do you think that there's not a trade market for Zach LaVine? And lastly, with the trades that I suggested, would you like to see any of those trades happen, based off the fact that Portland is still going to want to do that deal that we talked about here on this last video, moving on from Ayton and Jeremy Grant? So let me know in the comments what you guys think. And even though we don't know what we're going to do with our team, we don't know what our point guard is going to look like, Lonzo Ball, and a whole bunch of other question marks, I'm still saying go Bulls, and I'll see you guys on the next one. Peace.